All right, let's see how close we can get to the 50. This is a checkmate. That's a checkmate. Down some material. Another one. Oops, another back rank. Cutting. Also back rank. Look out for the super bishop. Boom, checkmate. Right there. Oh, that's an interesting checkmate. That's the king traps himself. He should go in the corner and he survives. This wins a rook with the queen fork. Okay. That's a good question. Oh, we've got a pinned knight. Let's pile up on the pin. Whenever you see this king formation with this open diagonal, queen to h5 is almost always the proper move. For just that reason. Super bishop skewers two rooks like a shish kebab. Whoops. Now this is an Arabian checkmate. That's the name of that formation. We'll check him. Then play bishop to here. Bishop takes... Yeah, we're going to get his queen here. Check. Bishop takes rook, check. Give me your queen. Pleasure doing business with you, sir. He cannot stop this pawn. He really could stop it if I don't take the bishop. Here, bishop takes, and then he gets it. So, yes, I gotta do this. Yeah, just don't be crazy. Okay, now, here's the key. Bishop to g5. This is the... There isn't a name for this tactic that I've ever seen where you're going to... I mean, there is a name, there's a theme to it. This is a decoy. But we're going to play bishop to g5, forcing him to put his pawn here. Then we're going to play pawn takes pawn, forcing, you know, the bishop to move or take it. If the bishop moves, we go pawn check, winning his queen. And if his bishop takes it, we just take the knight for free. So it's a goofy sequence, as you see, and there's like there should be, you'd think, a specific name for this sequence, but there isn't. This is just a decoy. We're going to decoy the f7 pawn to f6. It just feels like there should be a special name for this sequence, which there isn't. Okay, queen has only one defender, the king. We hit this king with the rook, and if he captures the rook, we eat the queen. And he'll come up here, we'll do the same thing, but we'll do this with an X-ray. So now we hit him with the X-ray. That just, it forces him. He has no choice of running, because now it'll be a double attack. This pawn is pinned. Bam, pawn takes queen, threatening to queen, but we're going to take this rook with check. And then we'll be able to get behind the rook, the pawn here, because his king cannot get to f7. But you got to be aware that this pawn's going to queen. and then that you can get behind it because we can't play back to the first rank because the pawn with queen. And our king can't get it because it's blocked off the same way his king is blocked off of f8. Except we're blocked by a pawn, he's blocked by a rook. So that's the saving move. Hooray. Okay, clearly queen h2 check. Followed by king f2. Followed by, I'm going to assume, rook f4 check. King to e2. Queen takes g2 check. Probably is good. I'm not going to kill myself figuring this out. Oh. That's interesting. And that was winning. Alrighty. I'm feeling a desperado here. Knight takes bishop. If he plays knight takes knight, we take bishop takes g5, and that wins. So he has to play bishop takes bishop, attacking our queen. We play knight takes knight, attacking his queen. If he takes my queen, I take his queen. And his bishop is under attack, and my knight is under attack. He cannot take my knight and save his bishop. The desperado is winning. The knight is the desperado, as he eats one piece and eats another piece and is going to eat a third piece. And then I go king takes bishop and we're a piece up. Alrighty then. Rook takes bishop, king takes rook, c7. He can't get to the back rank to defend the pawn. He can't get to the square behind the pawn. Crushing. Well, now then again, he does have... Oh, he can't even check me because that is a super bishop right there. This is a super bishop. It defends the check that he would do to get behind the pawn. Defends the square he'd go to get in front of the pawn. Man, it's awesome. Super bishop. If ever there was a super bishop, that is the super bishop. Okay, I'm just going to go and take this. I'm just going to go knight to here. Queen takes pawn, loses to rook to b8 to defend the knight. Loses the knight on a6, loses the knight. The only move is here. Well, well, well. I don't know what we're doing. But I'm sure I'll figure out something. Oh man, look at that freak. This guy is trying to take our g3 pawn. Oh man, how do I stop this guy? Bishop check. Check. And then what? Then so what? That's what my dad would say. So what? Well, I don't like queen takes rook. Nothing can defend g3. Oh. Actually, that doesn't do it either. But that does. Pardon me. I realized I saw a move that doesn't work, but watch this. This is what I saw. Bishop to g3, I'm sorry, bishop to d3 blocks him from checkmating me. He's still going to take this. And when I did that, I said, hey, wait a second, that's checkmate. So we just go bishop check and then checkmate. One way or the other, you're getting checkmated, brother. Man, I thought we were dead on that one. All right. There's an indefensible checkmate. Check, Boom. Check. King of G4. And now what, Bobby Fischer? Okay, good question. Check. King G5. F4. Check. King to G4. Ah. Queen to D7. Solves the problem. Or does it? That is the right move, but still got this checkmate threat that I have to figure out a way to stop. Oh, dude. Queen takes pawn. Pawn takes queen. Rook to G7. That is checkmate, sir. Now that was unbelievable. Okie dokie, check. Well, looks like queen takes queen loses. We're just a piece down. We don't win the bishop. But we get queen takes F2 check, or I've got to look at queen takes B2 check, because both of these are symmetrical looking. So if we go, let's just look at the most obvious to me is queen takes F2 check. Problem is he can just go to the back rank, and so what? Like king to C1, and it's really a so what? We don't have any other checks. Well, I mean, we don't have any good ones. We have rook to E1 check, trading rooks. Ooh, that doesn't work. We don't have rook to C4 check because the bishop guards that. Now let's go to the other side. Instead of F2, let's go queen takes B2 check. He cannot interpose the queen because we hit him with the X-ray. Rook to E2 check. King takes rook, queen takes queen check. And he's dead. So, queen takes B2 check. If he goes to the back rank, he can only go to D1, which is beaten by rook to D4, pinning the queen with the rook. So that loses. So as you can see now, my original idea of queen takes F2 is no good. With the mirror image version is killer. And you did what I thought. Crunch. You super lose. Well, I see this pin on this knight, which is, it's absolute. That means knight can't move, and it's unbreakable. He goes knight back here. We're going to go knight check, followed by knight takes knight. He'll play knight takes knight, and then we'll bishop takes knight. We're going to win a piece with this move right here. Check. Give me your knight. Okay. I got to take this, and this guy, here's the key. I'm going to play B4. Now, if you look this pawn, look at the square of the pawn. I'm going to explain this in case this is your first time you've ever seen this concept. When a pawn moves to queen, for example, let's imagine this guy's not here. Take the square the pawn is in, and then count the squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This produces a 5 by 5 square here that the king must be in to block, to catch the pawn at the queening square. He's in the square of this pawn. If I go to B4, this square now becomes 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 by 4, it goes to the E file, and he's on the F file. So he's outside of that square. But what happens is B4, A takes B4. If I play pawn, A takes B4, which is pawn captures pawn on B4, he moves to E2 or E3 or E1, he's back in the square, the magical invisible square here. 4 by 4 from the E file to the B file, and from ranks 1 through 4. But we can get him by this guy. This guy's square is 5 by 5. Look where it is. And he's outside of the square of this pawn already. So what we want to do is we want to deflect. This is the deflection technique, or decoy this pawn away from the defense that blocks this guy. So we're going to play b4. He's going to take it, and the mistake his pawn takes, we push the pawn. Now this guy's square becomes, he's in a4, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 by 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Look where it is. He can never catch this pawn. When I play a4, 4 by 4, he can go to the e file, but he needs to make it to the d file. He loses by force. He cannot make it. He's 4 by 4. He's one square short. He's on the e file. D file, you need to be on the c. This is how you win these king and pawn endgames. You mash them by understanding the rule of the square. Now, this is interesting. Bishops of opposite colors. We'd love to play c3, which we can do. The reason we can play c3 loses the pawn. You see that. Rook takes c3, we lose our pawn. But the problem he has, his bishop is pinned, his king has only one way to defend it. So if this is a clearance sacrifice. We're going to clear the diagonal for the bishop that sits on c6. So we go c3, he's going to go rook takes c3, you know, I take your pawn, and then we're going to go bishop check. And then we're going to eat his bishop. So we're going to clear this diagonal, this a6 to f1 diagonal. I will pocket your bishop, sir. Thank you. Look at this freaking guy. My natural tendency is to take that knight. And if I do that, guess what he does? Pawn takes knight, and my guys are forked. You gotta be kidding me. But I can play rook g4, which is good. And then he would need to play, although I don't really see what I'm getting out of this, but rook to g4. Queen to f6 would be terrible. I mean, queen to, not f6, queen to h6 would be terrible. I'd play knight to f5. Oh, the heck with you. I can just play knight to f5 right now. I can play knight to f5 because what that does is it threatens to check him and win his queen. So he's got to move a rook. He could move his queen, I guess. He has to defend e7 one way or the other. He can move his knight. He can move a rook or a queen. Queen could go to e6. Rook goes to e8. Any of those will stop that move. Now the question is, queen move would be the one that's the most natural. So maybe knight to f5 is the right move. Maybe knight to h4 is better. Then we have either knight can go to f5. So knight to h4, let's just look and see. Also frees our queen up, maybe, to do some nasty business. This f5 square is probably valuable. So that's the question. Knight h4, let's go. Well, queen h6, we're going to hit him with, you know, probably knight on d to f5. That's my general thought. don't like his knight on e5, though. It's really annoying. Well, we could, well, let's see. We could play knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, knight to f5. Again, well, he could still play, oh no, he can't do that. So he defends that with a rook. He's forced to play rook to e8 to defend the, or actually he could move his king. Okay, that's a possibility. Could move his king to h8, for example. Let's look at that move. And then we could play rook to g4. Just going to take that pawn. It sure seems like we're doing a lot of business, not getting much in return. But hey, you know, sometimes that's how it goes in tournaments. So, knight takes knight, pawn takes knight. Oh, no, he could go knight to, he could go queen to e6. Absolutely. Yeah, he'd just go queen to e6. I go rook to h4. I mean, rook to g4. He could just go g6. That knight takes knight doesn't do jack. Knight f5. Well, let's say knight f5, queen to e6 just for fun. Knight to g5, attacking his queen. Man, you're killing me. Haven't figured out what I'm doing yet. I really can't. All I can really do is knight h4, knight f5. You know, rook to g4 doesn't do squat. He just takes it. He's threatening to take my knight with his bishop as well. I don't like that. Okay. Something weird here. This is really strange. I don't know. Knight h4 seems to be good because it prevents queen to e6. It's the only move. Knight to h4 is the only move that prevents queen to e6, which, you know, seems like that's not an accident. That he'd like to play queen to e6. So we go knight to h4. Yeah, knight to h4, his queen has what? He's got g5 available, h6 is available. Yeah, this is looking, I would say, it's looking kind of ugly for him. So let's just see this. Knight h4. If he goes queen to g5, what can we do? Can't move the rook. It's like we're getting somewhere indirectly. It's like we're messing with his queen because his queen doesn't really have good squares. He's got h6 and g5 as well. Oh, he doesn't have h5 because my queen is there. So queen to g5. Well, let's just say that doesn't work either. Knight h4, queen to g5. Well, let's try knight to f5. Doesn't really do much, does it? Man, I feel as though I'm getting somewhere. All right, let me just look at this. Knight takes, pawn takes, rook g4. He can't go to f6. He can't go to e6 with his queen. His queen is semi-trapped. He can't go to h5. Rook takes g7. Check, wins that. Okay, so he's got rook g4, queen to h6. It's his only move, right? So then we just play knight to f5. And he's got to move. The F file is out of the question. You can go to E6 if you wanted to, but then we just check him. Got to be the move. Got to be. Oh man, that was tougher than it looked, I'm telling you. All right. Look at this. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers on E4. He's got 1, 2 defenders. So he can win a pawn, basically. Whoopity-doo. However, we can play pawn fork. He can play knight takes knight. We play knight takes knight. As long as our queen guards his pawn, he's pawn forked. So he's got no queen threat or whatever. So forget you, buddy. Oh my God, this is like super ugly, maybe. Queen takes queen is an idea. Rook takes knight is another idea. Check. 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 Hey, I think he's mated. You'll never see this one. I've never seen this sequence before. It's similar to a different sequence, which is how I identified this. Look at this. Rook takes knight, check. He's forced. He has no moves. He has to take it. The rule says if he has got only one legal move, you're probably winning. Check. Okay, how are we going to do now? I'll do another one. Rook to h8, check. Another decoy. All right. King takes is this forced only move. Queen to h5, check. King to g8. Queen to h7, check. King can only move to f8. Queen to h8, check. Only move, king to e7. Queen takes g7, check. This is a swallow's tail mate formation, is what it is. That's not that big of a deal. I'm just, mentioning it to you. You can look it up, on your search engine. So we got this guy with a double rook sacrifice. The first one's a kind of a, it's a sort of a decoy, also destroying his fortress. So you could call it either just, destruction or decoy. The second one's a pure decoy. Got it? Eat this. The swallowtail mate is this guy right there with queen takes g7. Fantastic. That was fantastic. Now, Brainiac, what are we doing? All right, this guy. What is this guy up to, man? That's a good question. Oh, grasshopper. Well, he's got he's got the building blocks of a mating attack on G2, just like we have the building blocks, to mate on G7. But both sides are short of what they need to execute said checkmates. So then it occurs to me that, look, our queen could play either queen takes b7 or queen takes f7 check. So that is the captures. The scenario is that both sides are similar to or near mating. The checks and captures show us queen takes f7. Check is a prominent move. And then I'm looking at piece contacts. Well, black squared bishop can't attack anybody. Everybody's on white. Queen can go to d5, doesn't do any good. Queen can go to b5, skewing the rooks, but the queen's worth more, so they don't care. Rook to f1 is it gets checkmated by queen takes rook. However, we do have one of the other rules I have, and I have to say this in every video because I don't know who's a new guy checking out my videos. One of the rules is, you notice this is, okay, I better mention this too. We go checks and captures, that's 1 and 2. 3 is piece contacts, and 4 is the situation. All right, those are the 4 like fundamental elements for me when I look for moves in problems, and also in the chessboard, playing in tournaments. Another rule that I have that's important, I mentioned previously the one where if you're hunting the king, if he has one move only, you're probably winning. Well, here's another big rule. Bishops of opposite colors. Whenever you're playing in a bishops of opposite colors, either middle game, this would be a late middle game, or an end game. I just say, and I don't know the actual number, but 99% of your moves are going to be made on the color of your bishop. So we have a dark square bishop, so moves that are potential killing moves are going to be moves that are dark square moves, like bishop e5 or bishop f6 or rook to f2. Squashing. This is absolutely squashing because we own f7 after the queen moves. So I was giving you the whole rundown, etc., and then I had seen rook to f2, and it made me realize that I hadn't mentioned it in this video for the new guys who haven't been here before, that you win on the color of your bishop 99% of the time. It might be 98%. I don't know. I don't know that anyone knows the actual number. I don't know that there ever has been a calculated number. But you get the drift. It's an overwhelming percentage is that you win on the color of your bishop. Okay, so we do have, checks, queen, well, we have queen takes h3, queen to g3 check, other things like, queen to c3, obviously losing, queen to e3 check, rook to f1 check, rook to f4 check, rook to f4 attacking the queen. Of all those moves, the only one that looks interesting and not losing outright is queen to g3 check. So when you have this kind of a situation, I have one move that looks decent. Let's go and brute force it. Let's follow this one and see where it leads us. Queen to g3 check. Well, here's the dealio. Queen cannot play g2 defense because we're going to eat his rook. Queen takes e1 check. Thank you, and you lose, basically. So if he goes to h1, queen takes h3 check. Going back to g1. So the question at that point is, now if you notice, the white pieces cannot check our king in one move. They have to make like queen to b7 and then queen takes c7. It takes him 2 moves to check us. So our rook has the flexibility to move to threaten, say, a checkmate, because white cannot get, white can play queen takes g6 check, but he's basically resigning if he does that move. So we're going to hit him with queen to g3 check. We're going to eat this. We're going to eat this. We'd love to play rook to f2. Can't do it. The bishop will take it. So let's eat this pawn. It is with check, after all. Now we got to figure out what we can do. We could play rook to f3 threatens checkmate. Does threaten checkmate, doesn't it? It sure seems like it does. Rook to f3. Well, rook to f3 is the only move we can make that threatens something. Like rook to g3 check. You know, king to f2. Yes, it's mate. Queen to g2 is checkmate. So it is threatening mate in 2. He can't defend it with the rook on e2. Can't go rook e2 because rook f1 is mate. So this is what I was getting at. I got to this position and I was looking around going, can he check us? Well, the only one is the move that's the same as resigning, as queen takes g6, because he has no queen. It's over. Okay, I don't know how that didn't win. I gotta check that. I swear that was winning. Oh, baby. Man, this is an interesting one. Rook. No, yes. Rook. Okay, the ideas are, well, rook to g2 doesn't do anything immediately. We have bishop to g2, and if he goes king g1, we have bishop takes bishop, discovered check, but he doesn't have to go to g1. He has 2 moves, not 1. So bishop to g2 check, king to e2, ha ha, you lose, and we lose. But the obvious weakness to your eye should be g2 and or the rest of the g file. It's really g2 to me. But the only things that can get there are bishop and rook. But I like to play this game, and this is another technique that I teach people. Let's play the what if game. What if our rook is gone from g7? Can our queen get to the g file? I'm pretty sure you said yes. And if you said yes, you were correct. This is a clearance sacrifice of this square for our queen. And it's also a decoy that decoys him so that this queen can check him when it gets to the target square. Eat that. Yeah, this is pretty much, you see this is going to be checkmate after I take his bishop. So the what if game is a very important and powerful tactic in real games, not just problems. What if, you know, whatever's not there, or what if I can put a piece on a certain square? Either way, sometimes that one was a deductive where we're like, what if our rook was gone? Sometimes it's what if our fill in the blank piece goes to a certain square. So that would be like a more, you know, an additive. We're adding the move that we want to see on the board with the what if. Sometimes the last one you saw was a removal of a piece. So that was subtractive, if that helps. See, math is your friend. If you play chess, math is your friend. Now, well, what do we have check-wise? Rook e8, rook g7, knight to g6 check. Our other rook could go really nowhere good. Man, I can't go to g1, bishop takes rook. I can't go to f2, bishop or knight takes rook. If I go to f3, this is just what ifs. If I go to f3 trying to go to g3, he goes knight takes knight. When rook goes to g3, knight takes rook. I'm like, man, that white rook on f1 doesn't really have a whole future ahead of him, okay? I'm just saying. Oh, we also have a move I had overlooked. Bishop to f8 check. You never know. Well, that looks pretty nasty, actually, doesn't it? And seriously, I wasn't saving that one for last for dramatic purposes. I literally did not see it until I just mentioned it. This is how it happens in real tournaments. Sometimes you're just looking, and then the last move you see is the move that might be the one. So let's look at this bishop to f8, check. It's like, well, we own f8, f7, and e6. And if the bishop is on f8, we own d6. So that check means he has only two moves, king e8 or king d8. Pretty sure you see what happens when we move the bishop. Regardless of which square he goes to, I couldn't care less. It looks like we're just going to win a bishop for nothing. And then we're going to be a piece up. Now, our pieces aren't the greatest, but hey, winning a piece is winning a piece. So bishop to f8 check, king to, let's just go, well, he has to go to d8. e8 is terrible because bishop takes bishop or bishop to d6. Both of those moves are checkmate if he's on e8. Okay, so again, this indirectly follows the rule. He's got one good move to play. Wow, dude, actually king d8, it's also checkmate. Wow, this is unbelievable. Bishop check, king to d8, and because I was explaining to you that if he was on e8, and this is the key, I'm not making this up. This is not done for dramatic purposes. I was wanting to show you guys, well, if he goes to e8, then bishop takes bishop or bishop to d6 is checkmate because his king can't move. And so I'm like, well, that means he has to go to d8 because he gets checkmated if he goes here after bishop f8. So bishop f8, king to e8, bishop d6 is checkmate, or one of two checkmates. I'm like, great, fine. So now that means that bishop f8, king to d8 is his only move. And then I realized, well, the reason you'd go to d8 is that you'd have the c7 escape square. Well, not if I play bishop d6. Discovered check is mate. So, as bizarre as it seems, the last move I considered as a possible move turns out to be a forced mating move, but only after I realized that if he goes to the worst square, there's a checkmate. So I literally had not seen that mate until you heard me discover bishop f8 check, and then you also heard me discover, hey, bishop d6 is checkmate regardless of where he goes. Goodbye, Charlie. That's what my dad would say. There you go. Okay. Now, this is an interesting one. Look at this dude. Man, this is nasty. What are we down here? We are down 2 rooks. This is the old, you know, he takes a rook with check. You go king to e7. Well, this happens in other situations where the guy takes one corner rook with check, the king moves forward, and he eats the other rook. And when eating the other rook for sure causes him to lose. So we have, well, we could play, it doesn't really, it's not winning. You might be able to win, but queen takes rook, followed by queen takes knight. No, he would just play queen takes b7. So you're not even going to get the knight. So queen takes rook, queen takes b7. He Nelsons us. You don't live. You lose. Okay, it's over. So we'd like to checkmate him, obviously. And we can't really do that directly. We can play queen to c1 check. Queen to c1 check. King to e2 is his only move. We do have bishop to b5 check. The c4 pawn movement to block would be met with bishop takes c4. Don't think it's a real threat. So we've got kind of a double diagonal checkmate thing going. What that does, queen c1, if you'll notice, that guards d2 and e3, as well as the back rank and the c file. So queen c1 check, king e2 only move. You know my rule. Bishop b5 check. whether he pushes the pawn to c4 and then we take it check or not, he has, after the bishop checks on c4, he has one move again. Or if he doesn't push the pawn, he's got one move, king f3, only move. Again, killer. We have knight takes e5 check, which covers both the f3 square where the king is at and the g4 square. Our queen owns this black diagonal. The knight owns part of this diagonal. The bishop owns e2. So he's here, queen, knight, king g3, only move. Pretty easy, right? These are all only moves. So we have queen to g5 check. Knight owns this, knight owns this, queen owns the dark diagonal. He has, our bishop is here. I'm sorry, our bishop is on b5 or c4. It doesn't matter which. Queen g5, king to a3. Yeah, queen g4, checkmate. He's mated. It's a forced checkmate. Let's count the moves of how many moves it takes to force checkmate him. That's how many moves we see in advance. Now, it doesn't matter if you don't see all of these moves in your mind as I described it, but I'm laying it out for you. This is like a test of your ability to see how far you can see of these moves. Now, maybe it's 3 moves, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 7. We don't know. Let's find out. That's 1, 2. I count each piece movement by each side as a separate move. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll notice our moves are always the odd moves. His moves are always even. That's 6. 7. Well, there's much more. We'll go back when this is done. This was problem number 1998. Okay, so now, oh boy, those of you who've followed my videos before, you know how much I love to look at these positions where I have the opportunity to cash this in a king and pawn endgame. So my first gut reaction, rook takes rook, king takes rook. Now, what am I doing? Is this a gettable? And this is a gettable win. Okay. Rook captures rook, king takes rook on e3. King to h5. What I'm going to try and do is get my king to the shepherd position, which in this position here with this king on the wide side of the board, he's to the right basically of our pawn. So I'm going to go left and try to get to h2 because that, you see that king guards the squares to queen. So that's what I'd like to do. But there's another position we might reach in between. So we'll see that. King takes e3, king h5. He can play king to f3. I'll go king to h4. The problem he has is this is a forced winning position for black. I'll show it to you. Those of you who've been here before, you already know what I'm getting at. Okay, exactly as we predicted. We don't push the pawn. We push the king. The reason is this. I'm going to show you this position. When my black king moves in front of this pawn, in the king and pawn endgames, there are several superpositions. I call them superpositions because they're absolute. There are no exceptions to the rule. This rule is when the king with the extra pawn gets in front of the pawn, it doesn't matter where it is on the file. It's an automatic forced win. You just have to play it correctly. So I expect this problem to end as soon as I play king to g4. Because this is one of the superpositions. I'm going to need to make a video of the superpositions so that you can see them all at one time. King to the superposition of g4. It doesn't matter who moves. Because whichever guy moves, it doesn't matter. The guy with the pawn wins with correct play. So what happens is that, for example, the white king having to moves to one side. It doesn't matter which, because you just do the mirror image if it goes to the other side. He moves to this side, you move diagonally to that side, which is one knight move from the other king, if that helps you. Doesn't matter how you get it. But what it boils down to is that there's another superposition that comes up, that there's a rule that if your king is assisting a pawn to queen and you can push the pawn to the 7th rank without checking, you win. If you play, for example, your king versus, it's king and pawn versus king. If your pawn move checks him, you will draw, because you'll be forced with a knight pawn. You'd eventually, if you're forcing it, it would go pawn to G2 check. He'd go in front of it. You go. The only move you'd have, because you're either F3 or H3 here, is you'd go here and it's a stalemate. So when pawn to the 7th rank is a check, it's a draw by stalemate. When pawn to the 7th rank arrives without check, it is a forced win. That's another superposition. I'll do that in a different video. But this is a superposition. This wins no matter who moves. And like I said, it was going to dissipate as soon as I played the superposition. Every good player knows that superposition. And once you master it, you become like me. You're like, whoa, king and pawn endgame? Thank you. I'd love to play. Okay. Now, let's see what we've got here. Everybody that's looking at this video has to see we have the unleashing of a vicious double check. Either knight takes F6 double check or knight to E7 double check. Unless you started playing chess like a couple of days ago, which I don't think is the case for most people, but it's possible. You might have a little brother, a little sister, niece or nephew, someone who doesn't know chess. They might see this for the first time. So we got a double check coming. We also have to worry about his knight threatening our queen, and also threatening our C2 square, which is knight check wins a rook. He's going to fork king and rook with a knight. So this guy's being a real kind of jerk. But we have this covered probably. We're not amateurs. Okay, so what do we have? I get this. We got an attack on his king side. We have sacrificed a pawn for this attack, apparently. Oh, hang on a second. My throat was slightly dry, so I needed to take a drink. All right, now, well, let's look at the moves that also check or capture, and that would be like rook to G7 check, taking the pawn. We'd also have potentials of queen to H5 is a nasty move, because it threatens to unleash that double check with knight takes F6, hammering him for mate on H7. That's a possibility as well. So let's see, because we cannot play. There's another one. There's another formation that occurs that it just occurred to me that there's another formation that I didn't mention. And the other formation is actually what this problem solution is. So you basically, if you look at this, you have knight takes F6 check or knight to E7 check. Now knight takes F6 check, unfortunately, doesn't attack like a queen or a rook. That would be too easy, but it would be a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. So, that attack, knight takes F6 check, attacks H7 and also the knight on E8. Well, I'm going to tell you, whoop-de-doo, as my father would say, so what? Okay? Yeah, so what is, and it's the correct answer, so what? However, there's another formation that occurs, which is the one that wins here. Now, see if you can figure out what that formation is, and I would suggest that you pause the video, give yourself a couple of minutes at the most. Don't sit there for half an hour. That's your business if you want to. You know, give it a little bit, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Okay, now I'm going to show you. If you stopped this video, paused it, and figured this out, you're awesome. Okay? If you didn't figure it out, it's okay. Almost nobody figures this out the first time they see it. I mean, not all. I mean, it's a small percentage. Let's put it that way. So it doesn't matter whether you figured this out or not. But if you did figure it out, it's awesome, and it's a great achievement. Congratulations. But the key thing is, we don't have to discover this on our own. We just have to understand it when we see it. Then it becomes ours forever inside of our brain. Watch this move. And the sequence that makes this the winner is the fact that his king is trapped. Remember, knight to e7 check, he has only one move. And you know my rule. If he only has one move with that king, you're probably winning. Well, guess what? It isn't probably. You're winning. I'm certain that now every person looking at this video sees checkmate in one. I'm just going to play it so we can move to the next one. But I know that you guys, all of you guys saw this. Now look at this freak. Look at this. Look at this. The first thing that jumps off of out to me is, and my dad would be the same way, knight to e3 check was known as the family fork. King, rook, and queen. Oh, baby, family fork. All right, knight e3 check. You know, king to f2, threatening to take the knight. Actually, king to f2 is a mistake. King to g1 is the correct move. The reason why king to g1 is the correct move is knight takes free queen. Ha, 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 ha. Rook to a8, checkmate. Ah, crud. So the family fork would knight to e3 check would probably win about half of your games, because most people would go king to f2, I'll attack your knight, make you move, haha, and then I'll checkmate you. But he doesn't realize that knight takes d1 check is check. Knight, so you take the queen with check. So you would probably win a substantial percentage with knight to e3 check, because the natural move is king f2. In this case, literally, he's got, several moves that would work. Anyway, so that's the funny part. But we have to check this guy. We got to check this guy. Yes. In fact, you should see, if you go back 2 problems ago, this is the same idea. If you don't remember what that was, you could pause the video. I can't pause the video and go back because I'm making the video. I know it would look really weird if I did that. But I see something that's very good. All right, I got to figure out how to make this work. I'm actually thinking that knight to e3 check is the winning move. That's what I'm thinking. Potentially, anyway. There's a potential that this is a winner. So knight e3 check. King g1, I think, is the correct move. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yes, knight e3 check, shockingly enough, is the winning move. But not the way most people would think it's the winning move, because they're thinking, I'm going to take your queen, and then you get checkmated. Here's the killer. Knight to e3 check. And as I said before, you know, I think king g1 is the right move. He could play... yeah, king to h1. In this case, actually, I think king to h1 is the proper move for defense. But the problem is, we're going to fork his king and his queen, and then when we're going to alleviate the mate threat that white has, and then we're going to kill his queen. It's just that simple. So the deal is knight to e3 check. Now, king f2 is terrible. We play knight takes queen check, and then we just, you know, laugh at his rook. All right? So you're not going to go to f2. You're going to go to, really probably should go to h1. Because what we're going to do is we're going to check him, and we're going to play queen to h3 check, threatening checkmate on g2. Now he can play rook check, and we just go king d7. You know, ha ha, you lose. All right. Okay. Well, you know me. I'm Mr. King and Pawn Endgame. So, in King and Pawn Endgames, you know, there's the basic concept which you guys have probably already heard about called passed pawns. Those are pawns that cannot be stopped by other pawns. Both sides have passed pawns, okay? Which is, well, you're even materially, let's put it that way. Now, go back to the 4 rules of problem solving and move making. Checks, captures, piece contacts, situation. In the king and pawn endgame here, this is just a situation position. The square of this pawn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm in the square, you lose. He's in the square of my pawn too, okay? So what happens here, there is a concept in king and pawn endgames for those of you who have not seen it yet. And this is a classic example of the scenario that you must understand to win. And you're going to learn it now. Just, you know, without even trying, you showed up, bam, here it is. This is a killer. This is just as important maybe as the superpositions. Is that in this case, we're going to have a race to queen pawns in theory, but not really. Because we win. We kill his pawn, he kills ours. The problem is, we're going to eat this guy like Pac-Man. And this guy will never catch us. This is known as the distant passed pawn. So what this refers to is that the side with the pawn that's the furthest away from the rest of the pawns, which in this case, the key pawn is going to end up being the A pawn. Our A pawn will become a queen and win the game. These 2 pawns cannot move. This is the target. The target for black to win is the A4 pawn. Once we get this, it's over because he'll have no pawns. So the pawn furthest from this one is the one that causes you to win. Because the distraction to catch the A3 pawn ties the king up and puts him so far behind, he'll never catch this A pawn. We catch this guy easily. He can catch this easily too, but he's so far away. It doesn't matter. So the question is now, the people, when they make these problems on this computer, they're cheap guys. We have 2 moves which win, and they're both equally winning. Either here, because we just have to be in the square. We're already in the square. This is still in the square. This is still in the square. And it doesn't matter. We can get to this square in 2 moves, either diagonally and then diagonally, or horizontally. I don't know. I'm going to assume diagonally. Somehow they rate it as more important. I have no idea how they come up with this garbage. Sometimes. And this one's a 50-50. Both of these moves are absolutely equally winning. And they may only give me credit if I choose the correct in quotations one. Okay? Because I'm going to eat this pawn. Where it goes, I don't care. Because it doesn't really matter. It sort of does, but I'm going to go here. Let's just assume he pushes. Here, he pushes. I go here, he pushes. I go here, he pushes. I eat it. Now, I'm on c7. He's going to go after my pawn. He has to. c6. Eats it. c5. King to b6. I'm sorry. King to g3 for white. King to b4. King to f3. King takes pawn. King to e3. King to b3. And he can go king to d2. And I go king to b2. And he is completely blocked. And I queen. So that's the sequence that wins. Essentially, that's the most difficult sequence, is that he forces me to go to the c7 square. These guys are jerks, dude. I'm telling you. Whoever created that problem is an absolute jerk. My move absolutely wins by force. So, whatever. This is how they cheat you. Or in this case, they cheated me because I solved the problem correctly. Whatever. All that matters to me is that you guys learned how to win that problem. Or in your games, the distant passed pawn is the killer. So, let's see. We have... What is this guy doing? He's trying to checkmate us. Okay, this makes it easier. The situation says queen takes pawn. If it isn't mate, it's so nasty that it's close. So anyway, so we need to check him with the rook, obviously. King to here. Now we can play... Hey, we can play check. He has to put a piece there. And then if he puts the bishop here, we go queen takes rook, defending this, which is no longer a threat. If he plays rook to here, we go queen takes this, defending this once again. Forget you, buddy. So queen check. If he moves his king, we eat his queen, because the bishop guards this square, pawn guards this square. He has this one, or he has interposition. So you can interpose, and I'm going to take whatever you leave me. Okay. I don't know what he's doing. Let's just assume... Well, if I take this knight, he's going to check me. So, if I check him first, he can go king to g4. I check him again. Check him again. Let's see. King to g4. Queen takes e4, check. King to g5. I mean, king to h5 would be queen g6 checkmate. That's not going to happen. He can go back to g3, I guess. I'm just winning this because of this. This is distant passed pawn's a killer. Oh, we'll make it easy. I'll take it. Well, yeah, this is an interesting kind of thing that I don't like. If I take this, it's checkmate. King takes pawn. Rook to h2 checkmate. Well, we can't take the pawn. I think that's fairly obvious. Rook interposes. Queen takes rook checkmate. Guess what? We have one move. It's like, you don't have to be a genius to find king to h5. We could analyze this, you know, a little bit differently and make it more work. It's like, that's checkmate, that's checkmate. We'll take we had 3 moves. One of them wasn't checkmate. We'll take the one that's not checkmate. Okay. If we go here, rook check, is nasty. So I don't want to play here. Rook check is nasty. All right? We don't want to go to the G file because he's going to get a rook check that he would not otherwise get. Now if we go here to interpose, he could play rook f5 check, king to h6. No more checking. Wow, that's not the move. You've got to be kidding me, dude. They cheated me for sure. Let's see what this is. Not on this problem. They cheated me on the last one. Jeez, I don't think that was the right sequence for them at all. Why don't you check here? Rook f6 check is the move that's scary. Well, I guess it's the same thing. It's just still rook to here. I mean, rook to here, rook takes, pawn takes, and he doesn't have much checks to begin with. I don't know. If I thought he was going to play this trash, I would have gone here so fast. It's not even funny. I would have gone there so fast, but I thought rook f6 was actually a threat. And the king here, rook takes, bam, rook to f4 check. I mean, queen to f4 check. Guess not, but that's my mistake. Okay, I was just trying to figure that one out. That one was my mistake. They cheated us on this king and pawn ending, and you're going to see the deal. There's absolutely no difference. As I said, the key variation was dragging our king to c7, and we win, as I said. It doesn't matter. Whoever programmed this fails to understand something. That there's no difference between these two squares, because every square you get to, if you want to be more accurate about it, this is actually better. Every square you get to from here, bam, you get to the same square from here. There's no square, you're never going to go to this square, ever. So we don't need to go to this square. That's the thing. I didn't mention that, but we don't need to go to this square. He's there. This square is worthless. So this square only has these two squares. This square gives us 3 squares, all of which are good. That's the problem. Whoever did this made a mistake, if he's a good player, that these two are absolutely equal. In fact, this one gives you more squares to go to, whatever. So no one's perfect. Whoever made that problem, and their solution is not perfect, which is why probably it has a lower percentage than 45%. Bull to the 3rd power. This is a very easy problem. Super easy, in fact. It has a 45% because they give this move, which wins, an incorrect result. It's wrong. Now, what was the dealio? Okay, we checked him on this. This was a check on G3. It's not forced. It is literally not forced. Queen to G2 is not a forced move. And it's not his best move. His best move is to go in the corner and to repeat. There's nothing you can do. He goes back to H1. There's nothing better. King to H1. What are you going to do? mean, king to g2, as I told you, queen to g2, queen takes rook. But this move is not necessary. He just simply plays king to here. And there's nothing that black can do that specifically gets him. I mean, he will be gotten by queen to f3, which is why I played queen to f3 when I played it. I mean, rook to f3, sorry. Rook to f3 is a great move, but he just goes in the corner. I play rook to f3, and then, you know, he's got to do something else. I don't know what it would be. But again, if I was assuming he was going to play the worst move on the board, that's the worst move on the board, actually. Just in case you're wondering. He can't make a move that's worse than this queen to g2. Every move he makes is better. Which is only king. He's got king move, and he's got the worst move on the board. So, whatever, dude. So, I was cheated on this problem as well. So, you see what happens here. I got 41, and it gave me 2 strikes. Neither of my moves were wrong. I was cheated. Whatever, dude. Now, I knew that this problem had the potential to have a cheat answer. I didn't think that other problem had a cheat answer. But this one I knew it was going to be A or B. And I don't know how that whoever was in charge of this determined that this is the only move, which is not. So I knew this was a 50-50. At least this one I knew they could cheat me. I didn't know it the other one. It completely blindsided me. I just played the best move, and then they said I was wrong. So, whatever, dude. There's nothing you could do. However, this is a tremendous series of problems. So many great tools are in this video for you to add to your own attacking and move-making ability. So, that is fantastic. So, you know, don't focus on the result. 41, I should have been... I'm working on getting 50. Without those 2 cheat problems, I'm probably hitting 50. But whatever. So whenever I hit 50, it'll be even better. The point of these videos, I personally have the challenge I'm trying to get for myself. That's a little motivating factor. But overall, you saw all these problems, those king and pawn endings, the double check, super fantastic stuff. This is going to make you super strong. Go through this again. This might be one of the actual best videos for problem solving that I've made, just because of the variety. The double rook sacrifice, when I sacrificed the 2 rooks in the corner, that you never see that sacrifice sequence. I've never seen it before. So that was just awesome. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I enjoyed it, actually. It was really good because of all the neato stuff that I got to show you guys. And you know what to do. I'll talk to you later. Okay. This is something that you guys don't know. I've never mentioned it before. And it becomes relevant. When I finish this video, I always double check my videos to make sure that I got all the sequences copied to the computer and etc. And I go through them, and I was looking at it, and then I was watching this one, and I told you I was going to come back to it and show you how far the moves went, and then I didn't do it. And I was thinking, oh man, I gotta go back and do this. So the other thing that I also do is that until I finish checking the video, I always leave the window open on the problems so that I can go back and do exactly what I'm going to do, which I have never done before. So where we go and count the moves on this one. So it's pretty funny. So this one is at the very end of the stash. This is the final thing that I needed to show you. So, you know, we got this guy. We were going to count the moves. So that was 1. This is 2. This is 3. This is 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it ended on this one. So the 8th move, only move. Remember, I'm going to go back and just, show you. Queen dominates this diagonal, of course. The knight owns these 2 squares. Pawn owns this one. So his only move, you know my rule, king g3. So his 8th move is here. The 9th move for us is queen to g5 check. Once again, the queen owns these squares, the knight owns this one, and this one is owned by the queen as well. So that's the 9th move. The 10th move, king to h3. Actually, in the video, if you go back, I said king to a3. Oops. But anyway, you know what I'm getting at. It was just funny. So it was queen to g5 check, king to a3, and then we have the final checkmate move, which is move 11. This was 8. 9 is 8. He goes, I'm sorry. 7. 8 is here. 9 is here. 10 is king h3. 11 is queen g4. So this problem sequence is an 11 piece movement sequence to get victory. Now really, it's only 9, because when I was going through the video, and you can go double check what I said, that it doesn't matter. When we bishop check him, let's just go ahead and do it. When we bishop check him, whether he plays this move c4 or not was clear to me that this doesn't really matter. So this is just like padding the stats to say it's 11. Really it's 9, because everything is the same whether he actually makes the move and shoves the pawn in front of the bishop or not. It doesn't matter. The bishop's job was just to control this diagonal so he could no longer escape to e2. So if you want to be technical, it's a 9-move sequence. But the computer throws in the gratuitous 2 moves of pawn forward and bishop takes pawn. So now, I'm not taking this away from you. If you were able to do this in your head like I was and follow this with playing bishop to b5 check, he plays c4, we go bishop takes pawn check. And if you went through this entire thing and saw it all the way that you're checkmating him from back here, as I was doing in the video, from this position, if you went through all of this and you were able to mentally keep track of all of this for the full 11 moves, outstanding. I'm not cheap shotting your 11 and calling it only a 9. The fact that you follow the 11 is fantastic. You really only have to follow 9. I'm just saying, whatever. I'm not here trying to downgrade your personal achievement. Now, this is really important stuff, and I will tell you, this is funny. I've never mentioned this before. It never came up, but it comes up now. That I've really only done it, I'd say 10 times or less, where I played games blindfolded. And it's because you do these practices and what have you. It was really funny because the last time I did it was last year? I think it was last year. My friend's son, he's 8 years old. And he plays chess. He's pretty good, actually. They were like, when I play a game, and we played some games, and it's like, he's pretty good, but I'm way too good. As you've seen through my videos, there's no way a little kid is going to be a threat. So it's like, and I don't go over there to beat him. We were doing other stuff, and it was like, I was showing some chess stuff, and it's like, well, I could play blindfolded. He goes, really? My friend, he didn't know that. He'd never seen it happen before. I just don't do it. So it takes a lot of mental concentration. Not a big deal, but it's a big deal only in the context that when you play a blindfold game, it looks a lot better if you win. You know, it reminds me of that Bart Simpson sequence where he plays like three guys at the park. He's playing chess against three guys. Checkmate, checkmate, checkmate. They all checkmate him. So it's impressive that you play multiple games, Bart Simpson, but it's more impressive when you don't get checkmated in all three of them. So when you play a blindfold game, it's more impressive if you win. Although it was really funny because we were playing a game, and so my friend his dad is moving the pieces, and I was looking at the move. It's like he played whatever move, and I'm like thinking about it, and it was like I go, hey, that little freak is trying to checkmate me. And I looked at his face. I mean, I'm sitting in a chair far away from the game where I couldn't see it anyway. And I looked at his face, and he is like, man, he had this devilish look in his face. If you've ever seen that movie Problem Child, that's what he looked like. He was trying to checkmate me, that little freak, thinking that, I'm blindfolded. Or I don't have sight of the board. I wasn't literally wearing a blindfold. I just didn't have sight physical of the board. So it was pretty funny. But when you do this kind of stuff, eventually you'll get you get the ability as you become a stronger player to play a blindfold game. The first time I did it was with my brother. We had bunk beds. And I was like, I was in college. It was like, I was probably 20 years old. And 20 or 21, whatever it was. And he was like, he got a board. He's like, play me a game, blindfolded. I'm like, okay, I never did it before. I didn't. It was funny. He said I was falling asleep. He had to wake me up. I don't remember that personally, but that's what he said. I was laying in bed. It was at night, but the light was on, I guess. I don't know, or he had a flashlight or something. I don't know. He could see the board, and he's like, man, I played you blindfolded. You're falling asleep. I woke you up. You kicked my butt. It was terrible. So, when if you've ever read or heard about guys who play blindfolded games, which means they don't have direct sight of a board, this is what this skill gives you over time. So, like I said, this sequence goes 11 moves or 11 piece movements if the pawn is pushed, which the computer pushed the pawn. If it doesn't, it's only a 9. But it doesn't matter if you see only 3 of the moves at a time, because eventually your next level of improvement would be that the next quantum leap would be to 5. And then the quantum leap after that would be 7, 9, 13, and 15. Several days ago, I did a video in a king and pawn. It was a king and pawn and rook. And I think it was a knight as well, endgame. Something. It was a rook and king and pawn endgame. I did 15. It was not hard at all. So it's not a question of bragging. I mean, now as a student of the game, if you can do 9, 11, what have you, that's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with bragging a little bit, okay? So brag a little bit, because it's not normal, okay? This is a skill that's not normal. Now, it's not, it doesn't make you a superstar. It's cool. It's one of those things that people will go, really, you can see that? And you could demonstrate it for them, okay, whatever problems you're doing. Like in this case, I'm not demonstrating the number counting for the number counting demonstration. I just recognize that this problem was a longer than normal problem, and it was interesting. Let's see how long it was. It turns out to be 11. So, which is a good test, like I said, for you guys that you do it. It's like, well, you got 5. That's great. Because before I got to 11, I was able to do 9. And before I got 9, it was 7 and 5. And so, it's like climbing stairs. You just work your way up. Okay? It's not a big deal. It's not the end-all, be-all. It's just an interesting, side challenge. Like, how many push-ups can you do? Maybe you can do 6. Maybe you can do 25. Maybe you could do 50. I don't know. Everybody's different. So it's, it doesn't just, just because you can do 50, which is really very good. Okay. I'm not gonna say otherwise, because I've done it way back when I was a kid, when I was skinny, and I was in Boy Scouts, and I did 50. I was probably about 100 pounds. Okay, so if you could do 50, that's awesome. That doesn't necessarily make you the strongest man in the world, but 50 is it's not something that everybody can do. Trust me. All right. So it's one of those things. Some of you keep track of just for interest. Okay, just to keep it, just something. How tall are you? Well, when you're in third grade, you're a certain height. Okay, whatever. Fourth grade, fifth grade, etc. As you get older, you get taller. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's just something that you keep track of. So I just wanted to come back and do the counting like I promised you, because I had totally forgotten about it. Luckily, I looked at my own video. And then you got to find out about the blindfold story, which is cool. So don't kill yourself on the blindfold games, until I'd say you're at least like 1,700 or 1,800. As a general advice. But hey, whatever floats your boat, man. Everybody's different. I give advice about what you should do. I don't tell you what you should do or what you have to do necessarily, because everyone is different. You're not going to be me, and I'm not going to be you. And neither one of us is going to be Magnus Carlsen. It just isn't going to happen. But you be the best you can be. I'll be the best me I can be, and I'm good with that. All right? So hopefully you enjoyed it, man. Thanks for sticking around. Luckily, I kept my promise to you guys. All right? I'll talk to you later.